Today we're going to be doing this hyper-realistic Snickers bar in Ohuhu alcohol markers and Polychromos colored pencils. For those of you that are new here, my name is Michelle Moreus and I make art tutorials that are fun, easy, and accessible for everyone. If you're returning, then welcome back. Before we get into the video, it would mean the world to me if you guys would subscribe to my channel and hit that like button. You always want to start with a really good, accurate sketch. And it's kind of crucial in a hyper-realistic drawing to get that lettering right and get everything down so that it looks more realistic. And I'm just going to start going in with my Ohuhu alcohol markers, and I'm mapping in just some basic colors. And then we're going to go in with the Polychromos color pencils, and we're going to start adding all of our details. But you can see how fast things go when you're using the alcohol markers. You just get a nice little base layer going down, and then the color pencils will go beautiful right over top of that. So you want to really pay attention to where your values change and where your values are. You want to go in with a marker that is not quite as dark as the dark that you want to put in at the end. And the reason for this is it's going to be really hard to lighten up the marker. You can easily darken it up with the pencils or with a darker marker. But if you put too much dark marker down first, you won't be able to lighten it up. So you just want to be mindful that you're not going too dark on the marker part, and you can always build that up gradually and slowly. So ahead of time, I have pre-sharpened all of my pencils, and I have picked out all my colors before I even started to draw. And this just makes life a whole lot easier as you go along in the drawing, because you don't have to keep going back into your set and trying to find new colors. So I have everything right next to me. Everything's pre-sharpened and just ready to get going. When you're ready to get drawing, you've got everything at hand. So I'm going in and I'm just putting in all of my values. I've got that Snickers wrapper almost done. We need to add some highlights, and we need to add a little bit of transition where the highlighted areas are, because they're not just going to be white. And we're going into the candy, and we're trying to give the illusion of that caramel and that nougat in the candy bar. So the other thing that's important is the shadow part of the drawing, because it really gives it a more realistic effect, that where the light's coming from, and if you get that shadow right. So I went in with a very light marker to start with, and I'm just going to deepen that up with the colored pencil to kind of give it a little bit more drama. So, but I have mapped in with the marker first, and then we'll go in and we'll lightly go over everything as we go along and just keep building up on all those layers. If you'd like to up your art game and learn with me and draw along with me, you can go over to my Patreon page. I'll put a link in the description below, and there you can find full-length tutorials of most of my works here on YouTube. And I give you the sketch outline, I give you a materials list, and I give you several reference photos for what we'll be drawing. And then you can draw with me real time with a clear voiceover. And if the drawing took me 3 hours, it'll be 3 hours of video that you can draw right along with me as I'm going. So check that out on Patreon, and I'll leave the link below. So we're just building up really slowly, and color pencil is best when it's built up really slowly. So we're going to use light layers, and I'm mixing several tones of brown to get that chocolate color in there, because it's not just one shade of brown. There's several tones in there. Where the light hits it, it might look a little bit more red, and where the shadows are, it might look a little more brown. So you want to be mindful of that, and you want to make sure that you use several colors in there and mix them together. And that's done in the light layers. And so you could put tons of light layers down and you build it up. And this creates a much richer, much more realistic finished product. So the best realistic artwork is created when you have a lot of really high contrast. High contrast is where you have very dark shadows and you have very light highlights. So if you're taking your own reference photos, you want to make sure you take several of them and change the lighting and see what is more effective. But definitely with high contrast, you're going to get a much more realistic, hyper-realistic drawing in the end. So your paper choice is going to be really important in this particular drawing because we're using mixed medium. So you're using markers and colored pencils. We're not using any OMS or any solvent to blend the pencils, but you do need a paper that can handle the Copic markers. And the reason for this is if you have too porous of a paper, the markers bleed out. If you have too thin of a paper, it's going to bleed right through the paper and it's going to mark the surface underneath your paper. And then it's just going to look terrible because it bleeds right through. So you want to make sure you have a nice heavyweight paper. I prefer a smooth paper, so I use Strathmore 400 Bristol paper, so it's got a very smooth finish, but it is a very thick paper, which allows you to still erase the color pencil. It allows you to go in with an electric eraser and pick out some details if you need to add a little, highlight or something that you've gone over with the pencil. And it can take a lot of layers of marker. So I really can't stress this enough. Your outcome of your drawing is going to be, your paper choice is going to be pivotal in how this drawing comes out. So make sure you use a nice heavyweight paper, something with not too much cotton in it, like a full-on cotton, like an Arches cotton watercolor paper. But the nice heavyweight paper is really going to make a huge difference in the end result. So we're blending all our colors together by using the burnishing method. Burnishing means that you gradually add more and more pressure to the pencils to smush all of those underneath layers together. So all those several shades of brown, if you use a lighter shade of brown to burnish, you will go over and it'll mix all of those different layers of color pencil that you have, and it will just smooth out. It'll get rid of the grain of the paper, the little white specks showing through, and it'll just be a much more finished looking drawing as you blend those colors out really smoothly. So don't try to go in too dark. Like I said, in the beginning you want to layer those up gradually, but then as you get to the desired color that you're going for, then you can go ahead and increase the pressure and burnish all those colors together, and you'll get a nice smooth finish. Now I'm also going in and I'm deepening up all of my shadows and my shadowed areas, and this is going to just add more drama. And make sure you go in with your kneaded eraser or a brush. I use a cheap makeup brush sometimes. The colored pencil tends to leave a little dust on the paper, and you need to pick that up so you're not dragging it around with your hand, because that will mark the paper up and it'll just look messy and unfinished. So make sure you clean that up every now and again with a brush or the kneaded eraser, and it'll just save you from having to try to erase that in the end and mushing it in with your hand. So normally I would put a piece of tracing paper or a glassine sheet underneath my hand, but because I'm filming and I want you to be able to see exactly what I'm doing as I'm doing it, I don't put the paper down. So you'll see me erase a lot more than had I had a piece of paper under my hand and not, dragging around that dust. Don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section below. I love hearing from you guys, and it makes me feel closer to you when I have that rapport back and forth with you in the comment section. So please subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and happy art.